everyone. Welcome today. And if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Jeff, and I'm the lead young adult pastor here at Hope City. I lead the project, which meets every Sunday night at 7 o'clock p.m. here at our Millwoods location. So if you are a young adult, or you know a young adult who could use a great young adult community, please let them know about it or direct them towards me. You know, the project the last couple of months, the last half a year or so, has really been just seeing some incredible things. And since Christmas, we've seen 26 young adults baptized, which is great. It's awesome. But even tonight at 7 o'clock at the project, we have 6 more young adults who are getting baptized tonight as well. So we're just seeing God, it's so awesome. And we're seeing God move in the lives of young adults in a demographic that statistically He's not supposed to. And so we're seeing God move, and it's just such a privilege to be a part of what's happening, what God is doing in our young adults department, but also just in our church here at Hope City. You know, it's been a dream, and it is a dream to be on stage here today at this church at Hope City, because when I was 12 years old, I showed up to this church, to our youth group, and that's where I became a Christian. Joined a small group, and it just kind of all from there has led to being a pastor here and following Jesus. And so to be here in front of so many people and with so many people that played a huge role, the people that make up this church played such a huge role in my development as a Christian and just as a man. And so it's just cool to be here. And it's awesome. So thank you so much to everyone that's been a part of my life and just this church. No matter wherever I've gone, it's always been home to me. So I'm just so thankful to be a part of it and to be here today. So to start off, I have a question for you. Isn't it just great when you get to see somebody get what's coming to them? Like justice. Like it just feels good, right? Now, I have a confession for you. And I hope you can look at me the same after I tell you this as when you walked in here. You're not going to walk out here, I can't listen to this guy. He can't be my pastor. I not only enjoy, but I really love watching professional wrestling. Like WWE, and listen, I know it's more for kids than it used to be. I know that it's predetermined, not fake. Predetermined, it's very real, but it's predetermined, and I get that. But the thing I think that everyone can get behind in wrestling is the very basic concept of the heel or the bad guy, the guy that's been getting away with lying, cheating, stealing, bending the rules, sneak attacks, just being an overall evil, bad dude for apparently no reason. It just keeps winning week after week, show after show, and it usually takes a couple of months, usually at a big event, where finally the good guy, the baby face, gets back at him. The guy tries to cheat and he fails, or the good guy overcomes all of these insurmountable challenges, and then he finally wins. The bad guy gets his comeuppance, he gets what's coming to him, and you're just sitting there. I'm a 34-year-old man sitting alone in my basement at 10 o'clock at night and like, yes, this is what it's all about. Justice. And then I wake up my wife, and it's hard to explain to her what just happened and why that was worth it. But she doesn't get it. It's important. This matters. This was 8 months of this, and finally it comes together, and justice finally wins. I don't know about you, but I've had experiences kind of like this in my day-to-day life. A couple weeks ago, I was driving down a single-lane highway, going maybe a few feet per second faster than the speed limit, but not much. I am a Christian, right? But I was going at least the speed limit, if not a little more, and all of a sudden this big, jacked up, lifted, blacked out Dodge Ram Hemi engine Monster Energy drink sticker on the back, straight out of a Leduc Tim Hortons, is right behind me, right on my bumper. And he's mad that I'm not going fast enough, and I'm just sitting there I'm like, what is going on? What is happening? That thing we've all said, is this person drunk? Like, what's wrong? And all of a sudden, he starts to kind of cut past me. It's a single lane. He thinks he can get by me on the left, but he cuts out to the side, and he sees a semi-truck. He thinks, okay, that's not the best idea right now, but he's still mad. He's revving his engine up at me, and then he's pulling back, and he's coming back up again. He's honking his horn. He's flashing his lights. And I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? Finally, he sees his chance, and he cuts right past me. And as he passes, he makes sure to roll down his window, make eye contact, extend his hand, and then extend an additional digit that I will not present to you in church today. And there's something about that gesture that just swells up rage in us, right? He didn't touch me. He didn't harm me. But I'm mad. How dare he? Something has to happen. I have to do something about this. I have to act, or else he'll get away with it. And I start to think, what can I do? I think, well, I could. No, that's illegal. I could follow him to, no, I don't want to end up on the news. What about, Jeff, you're a pastor. You can't do that. You're a Christian. Can't do that. But I'm thinking, man, something's got to happen here, right? And no sooner had I thought what we've all thought in this situation. Where is a police officer when you need them? Because I know I'm going to get home in an hour and there's going to be a photo radar for going 2 kilometers over in my mailbox, and this guy's going to get away with it. But no sooner had I thought those thoughts that I see the beautiful ballet of the dancing of blue and red lights behind me. And after the brief moment where I suspected it was me getting pulled over, which would have been real injustice in my mind, I see it whip past me and go and take that driver in the black Dodge Ram up to the side. You see, the driver that when he passed me on the left, he had almost hit in oncoming traffic. It wasn't just anybody. It was a police officer. And I'm just saying, as he was pulled over, as I kind of slowed down, not that I would, I might have just slowed down a little bit. I didn't know so much laugh a little bit at him. Okay, I laughed a lot, and it wasn't just like a like, ah! That's what you get. And in my mind, in that moment, justice had been served. Tranquility, peace had been achieved in the universe. And I had a good day. I went and got coffee. I was just celebrating. It was a little extra expensive coffee that day. Felt good. I felt vindicated. I felt like I had won and everything was good. So how about you? How do you feel when you're wronged? How do you feel when somebody does something that hurts your feelings, says something that offends you, offends someone you know, or maybe a group of people you don't even know, but it bothers you? They cheated on you, they stole from you. Friends, how do you process injustice against you? We're going through this current series. It's called Downside Up, going through what's called the Beatitudes, one of Jesus' most famous sermons found in Matthew 5. And it goes through all these different character traits that, if we follow them, will help to make us exemplary Christians, to act and live like Jesus. You want to know what an incredible Christian looks like? Look to the Beatitudes. You want to know how to exemplify Jesus? We look to the Beatitudes. So let's take a look at them. In Matthew 5, 3-10, it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." We live in a world and a culture today that seems to be constantly at war with itself. Like, we love justice, right? Like, social justice is a common term. We are looking for virtuous outcomes. We want justice, we want equity, we want equality, we want to fight for these things, we want to help everybody and carry that flag of social justice really high. Patience and love and compassion, these are characteristics that we really value. That would be, if you ask me, what is the marker of a society? It's justice. We want that, right? But yet we go to war with each other over everything, interpersonally and culturally and societally. We lose our minds because the moment somebody diverges from that virtuous orthodoxy that we live within, or we tend to claim that we value, we snap. We got to call those people out. We got to attack that problem. We got to take care of the perpetrator, and we got to cancel the danger. Those people are irredeemable, broken, and dangerous. But with the ever-increasing speed of information, the internet has changed the game. This thing moves quicker than we can anticipate and sometimes even keep up with. At one moment, you're with the mob, you are the mob, and you're standing up for what's right. You're in line with morality, and you're doing all these good things. But the next day, the landscape has shifted a little bit while you were sleeping, and all of a sudden, you are the problem, you are the danger, and you're in trouble. And all of a sudden, That moral sense of true social justice has moved away from where you are. And the more I talk to people across demographics, age groups, they are absolutely exhausted by this. You can't keep up. The cultural moment is so fluid, so ever-changing. It's like, how do I even keep up with what's happening here? Have you ever felt like that? It's like jumping on a trampoline, and then every time you jump, somebody's under there just moving around that trampoline, and you just gotta hope that it's still there when you come crashing down. You can never trust what's there. It's not the same tomorrow as it was today, as it was yesterday. Just to be clear, I'm not making political statements. I'm not here to talk about political leaders, social movements, all those things. Those things can make a difference, but I'm here to talk about Jesus. I'm here to talk about what will actually change our hearts, will actually change the way that we live and the world that we live in. I'm not saying that the pursuit of justice isn't valuable or worth chasing after. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's undeniably important. That's why Jesus emphasizes it by referencing it here. Not only should righteousness be valued, but he says that we should be people that hunger and thirst for it. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. So what about you? How do you react when someone hurts you? When someone wrongs you? How do you react when you're stabbed in the back or somebody has done something that is egregiously painful? How do I process injustice done against me? We all have very different perspectives of how to deal with these injustices. Culturally, across the board, just even from person to person. A good example is if somebody is murdered and we catch the criminal that did that, we all agree that there needs to be something done about that. Like there is a punishment needed. Some people would see the only punishment that's really reasonable is to have them thrown in prison for life. They lose their freedom for life. They took a life, they lose their freedom for life. Okay, fair enough. Sounds good. A lot of people are good with that. Some people say that's not even close to justice. What we actually need to do is put them to death. The death penalty is the only logical and righteous solution to bring justice into the situation. It's an eye for an eye, and therefore you take a life, you lose a life. Both agree that there needs to be something done. Both agree that there's something incredibly wrong. But it's very, very different how they approach that. Both would claim they're seeking justice, but both would completely disagree with what each other call that sense of justice. There's a different outcome in our mind as to what morality is. So is justice based on a society's perception, a response to an individual's actions, cultural systems, different beliefs? Which one is correct? Is justice even real? Is it something that we can even measure? Does it matter? All of these options are seeking justice, but who decides what it is then? Who decides what right? Is there no such thing as truth? Whose truth matters? How can I hunger and thirst, like Jesus says, for something so abstract that I can't even define it or measure it? What is Jesus even talking about? See, the Bible, when we look at it, means the same thing for us today that it always did for the people it was first written to. And we always here at Hope City turn to the Bible because we know that we can find the person of Jesus and how to best replicate the great life and the valuable life that he lived out. There's value in it for us today just as much as there was 2,000 years ago. But before we can kind of understand what's happening or what it means for us, we need to look at what it meant for the people that listened to or read it the first time it was written. So 2,000 years ago, Matthew was actually written by a guy named Matthew who was a disciple of Jesus and had a first-hand account of Jesus' life. And he was a guy that would have been writing in Greek. So this Beatitudes, they were written in Greek. So we need to look at the language it was written in. In Greek, the word righteousness, as is written here, is actually interchangeable with the term justice. Well, that complicates things a little bit, doesn't it? The interesting thing is that they're interchangeable, but does that mean that they are the same? The Greek word for justice is pronounced dikoseni. And the Greek word for righteousness is dikosun. Dikoseni, dikosun. Even those two sound the same. Like, we're not getting any further ahead, it feels like here. These are used culturally interchangeably there, and honestly, somewhat here in Canada, in the English language as well, to the point where if you actually read some different translations of the Bible, for example, the New Living Translation, which is a good translation, but it has the word justice instead of righteousness. Now, that doesn't mean that they actually are the same thing. It doesn't mean that those versions of the Bible are wrong. It just means that that's within our language how interchangeable we put them, and they were back there as well. So if they're interchangeable back then and they're a little bit interchangeable now, why does it matter? Can't we just run with it? Just pick your word. Jeff, stop picking this apart, man, right? No, because it does matter. It's because they're actually not the same thing in our context, in our world, and when we look at a Jesus-based life, it does matter. The truth is, we need to know what we're aiming at. Because if you think that the Jesus you're aiming for, the way of Jesus you're aiming for is based off of a form of righteousness or justice that is reflecting our social justice of our society right now, you're going to miss the mark. We need to know what we're aiming for. We need to know what Jesus, who we want to embody everything and replicate the way he's called us to and the way he lived his life. We need to know what that looks like, or else we're just aiming in random directions and we'll never hit the mark. We live in a world that hungers and thirsts for justice on paper, but eats itself. A world that's in the pursuit of justice at all times, in pursuit of righteousness, but they're not hitting it. The world seems to be getting worse. They're similar, these things that we're talking about, but how we apply them to our lives is drastically different, and it really, really does matter. When Jesus spoke in these verses, in the Beatitudes, he specifically used the word in his language for righteousness. So what's the difference? Well, let's define them. Righteousness is often used to represent the state of one who is as they should be or is in good, acceptable standing with God. It's generally used to refer to the concept of living in right relationship with God and with other people, where justice, on the other hand, is more broad and has this ranging idea that can encompass beliefs and ideas of justice, righteousness, fairness, and virtue. And here, 2,000 years later, we are still kind of having this wrestling match, this linguistic trap that these can lead us into, where the fact is that justice as a word, it's vague, it's malleable. It can be molded to fit what society deems it should fit as, to the point where it no longer looks anything like what true godly, Jesus-based righteousness looks like. I'll give you an example why this happens. We look into the book of Romans, a guy named Paul, who was a guy who was hunting down and hated Christians, trying to end the early church. And he has this encounter with Jesus and ends up being the greatest advocate, planting churches, missionary, this wrote a good chunk of the New Testament. And he writes to the church in Rome, in Romans 3, "What shall we conclude then? Do we have any advantage? Not at all. For we have already made the change that Jews and Gentiles alike are all under the power of sin. As it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are open graves. Their tongues practice deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery mark their ways, and the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes." Thanks for the uplifting message. And we can look at that and be like, I'm not that bad. Like, I'm not perfect, but like a viper with venom on my tongue spitting it at people, like I feel like that's a little harsh. And listen, I'm not here to say that everyone here is horrible, evil people, but what Paul is actually saying is that according to God's standard of perfection, which is sinless, we don't measure up. Every human, from a politician to warlord, from a baby to an adult, anybody, doesn't matter, has sinned. We've all contributed to the chaos in the world around us, and because of that, the poison and the disease of sin has entered us and corrupted us. So it doesn't matter what we're doing, whether it's looking how to put righteousness in our life or trying to be a good person at work or whatever, we are going to bring some element of selfishness into it. We will take the most pure concept, even like justice and righteousness, and we will slowly drip it away from the righteousness that God has called us to until it becomes nothing more than a battering ram for our own ideology and our own agenda. I think we've all done that on some scale, not intentionally, but it just happens. The truth is this might sound a little controversial at first. Social justice doesn't exist. It's not real. It's malleable, it's fluid, it's unreliable. It's vulnerable to the corruption we all carry, every person, you, me, politicians, everybody. Justice in that context is not righteousness, but righteousness in its purest form, in the way we're supposed to chase after, to hunger and thirst for, is an alignment of mind, body, soul, and heart with Jesus' heart. When we align ourselves with Jesus, we will seek and find righteousness. It's not a politician or some change to a system or a societal structure that's going to change the world. It's going to be us knowing Jesus. You see, I think that even though we aim and try so hard to find righteousness and justice in our world, we've tried to legislate heaven on earth, but we forgot to invite Jesus along with us. I don't know if you know this, but heaven without God, that ain't heaven. Doesn't work. And it's not working for us either. And even though we feel like we can see it, we can strategize, we can have this opportunity, it's right there, but it's like a mirage in the desert. I can see it in front of me, but it's just out of reach. Never there. Never achievable. I want to take a look at a story in the Bible about a guy named Jonah. You may have heard of him, or maybe you haven't. Jonah was a prophet. Most of the stories in the Bible, there's a lot of books in the Bible that are about prophets, actually written by prophets. Prophets would speak on behalf of God to his people at that time, and Jonah was one of those. But Jonah, the book of Jonah, is actually a narrative about Jonah's life. It starts off with God telling him, Jonah, go to this place, this city called Nineveh, which was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, who were like some really awful human beings. They were like a militaristic group known for their ruthlessness, war crimes. You don't want to hang out with these people. Like, they're dangerous. It's like the worst, last place you'd ever want to go. And Jonah, because he was a Hebrew and they were the sworn enemies, they wanted to basically kill all God's people. He revolted and he went the other direction. So instead of going to Nineveh, he goes off to a city called Tarshish. And he's like, okay, I'm gone, gets on a boat. And while he's on the boat, God's kind of like, yeah, you ain't going to be able to pull that off, buddy. Hits him with a big storm. The ship is at risk of sinking and everyone's panicking. And Jonah kind of lets the crew know, yeah, I kind of disrespected God. He controls the world and universe. Probably, if you throw me in the ocean and I'll drown, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Great. So they throw him over reluctantly, but they do. And end of story, right? He drowns? No. God's like, not so quick, Jonah. Sends a big old fish. We're not talking Free Willy. We're talking a huge fish. Comes and eats him. And he spends 3 days in there. And this isn't like some fairy tale. Like, dude was sitting in there in the fish guts. Didn't have a scuba suit. Didn't have a shelter. This isn't a Disney movie. He was hanging out in fish guts for 3 days. It took him 3 days in fish guts in the dark, stinky, gooey nastiness before he finally was like, maybe I should tell God I'm sorry. 3 days! Finally, he's like, God, okay, listen, my bad. I'll go. Just let me out. I wasn't thinking straight. Didn't have my coffee that morning. I got to go. So the fish, by God's command, vomits him up onto the beach, pukes him up. It doesn't just kind of spit him like you might have seen in a children's Bible or like a story when you're a kid. No. Vomits him up onto the beach. Yuck. Gross. And then from there, Jonah goes off to Nineveh and he preaches this story of potential oncoming destruction from God. And so he's thinking, well, they're just going to be like, yeah, right, who are you? You're just some prophet from this God. We've heard of him before. And then he gets to go and watch the city get destroyed by God. Shock. They're like, okay, sweet, great. I'll follow God. He's like, what? Are you kidding me? That's not how this is supposed to go. And sure enough, even the king takes off his royal robes and puts on these rags to show that he's not even worthy of being associated as royalty in front of God. And they all turn from their ways. They start to follow Jesus. And all of a sudden, mercy is shown to these people. And they start to seek after a righteous way of living. And they see the error in their ways. And of course, Jonah celebrates. It's good news. Happy ending, right? No. Jonah doesn't feel good about this. Jonah's not happy. Jonah is furious. He wanted to see these people that he hated murdered, killed, destroyed. He wanted their annihilation. He didn't have a change of heart in the fish. He just wanted a front row seat to see the annihilation of these people. He wanted vengeance. He thirsted for a destruction of Nineveh, not for any opportunity for them to see the error in their ways and to move towards God. In Jonah 4:1, it says, but to Jonah this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you were a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it's better for me to die than to live. I'm so mad that these people didn't die that I want to die. He didn't jump off the boat or get thrown off the boat because he was some hero, selfless act. No, he would rather die than see these people be shown mercy. He literally strategized against God's goodness. Now, this doesn't sound like a guy I want to hang out with, let alone somebody that would be a prophet of God. He doesn't hunger or thirst for righteousness. He's starving for revenge. What a bad dude. He admits his hate. He admits that he just hates these people so much that he's so clouded by deceit and hate and destruction that he would rather see them die. The truth is, we all love the idea of justice until it's time for us to pass on that righteousness and forgiveness to other people, when it kind of counteracts our own feelings of what we would like to see happen. When it's extended to others who don't deserve it, that's hard for us. We see the person that we dislike, that hurt us, and we want to see them get what's coming to them. But that's not how we should live. We look at Jonah and we're like, this guy's the worst. I'll never be like that. But can I ask you an honest question? Are you or me really that much better than Jonah? Are we that much different than he is? The story shows how different our perspective is from God's perspective on righteousness and justice. When we seek justice on our own terms, we actually just allow the rod of sin to change how we perceive it and how we act out on it. This is the truth. We can't do it ourselves. We are so corrupted, whether we even recognize it or not, that we can't just put our own perception on it. Only a direct connection to the heart of God, having God's Holy Spirit working through your life, will keep you from drifting towards selfishness. Only Jesus' righteous standard of what righteousness is can change the world. Without God, we can't do it. We're going to mess it up. There's a verse in the book of Philippians, and Paul is writing to the church in Philippi. In chapter 1, verse 9 to 11, he says, "And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God." We need to know Jesus. We need to not just know that Jesus exists, but we need to know who Jesus is, and we need to have that become a part of who we are. If we hunger and thirst for righteousness, we will hunger and thirst for Jesus. The truth is that we can have all these outcomes we want, but if we don't include Jesus in the solution, we're not going to get there. You want to be a better spouse? Hunger for Jesus. You want to be a better parent? Thirst for Jesus. You want to forgive those that have harmed you and done immeasurably painful and awful things to you in your life recently and a long time ago. You need to chase after hunger and thirst for Jesus, for the forgiveness and joy that can only come from him. If you want to change the horrible state of your life, your addictions, your family, your marriage, whatever you're walking through, your illness, you need Jesus in your life. You need to know him and replicate him and follow him in everything you do. And if you're living in a state where you feel like the world is hopeless or you're hopeless, there's no hope anywhere around you because the world is just circling the drain over and over and over again, I have news that you need to hear today, and we all do. That news is that there is hope. There is hope for you. There's hope for your family, for your kids that don't know Jesus anymore or don't follow Jesus. There's hope for your illness. There's hope for the broken world. Whatever is weighing on your heart, keeping you up at night, there is hope for you. And that hope is named Jesus. Jesus is that hope. Well, culture's view of what is hope, what is justice, what is righteousness, it changes every single day. It changes all the time. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You don't have to worry about him covering you. You don't have to worry about him being there when you need him. He is there as much tomorrow as he was yesterday and today. You can trust him. He is for you. He wants to know you. He died on a cross for you, and he is available to you, every one of us, no matter where we've been, who we've been, what we've done today. Forgiveness and hope is available to every single one of us. The truth is that the hope of the world isn't a new political leader. It isn't a new system. It isn't a new economic model. We can do all those things. We can try hard, but if we leave Jesus out of it, if we don't live for Christ, we're not doing any good for ourselves. Change will come not from new ideas, but from more and more people knowing Jesus, replicating his life and his standard and his righteousness in the world around them and in their own hearts, spreading that news, and that joy and that hope will spread, and that's how the world changes. That is the great hope that we have, not in our own thought, but in Jesus, who can change our thoughts and change our world. When you're hungry for something, you chase after it. You go find something to eat. When you're thirsty, even to the point of danger, like you're really thirsty, dehydration, you will stop at nothing to go after food and water. When you truly hunger and thirst for something, you are relentless in your pursuit. You want hope, you want righteousness, you want the world to change, you want your world to change. We have to be relentless in seeking God. So yeah, let's email our MP. But before that, let's pray. Let's call out evil in the world around us. But before that, let's seek God. Make sure that we align with Him, not just align with our own motives. Before we get mad at someone and cut them out of our lives, let's talk to God about it. Pray for that person. See how we can make that better. Jesus can help you with that. And if you're here today and you're like, Jeff, listen, you don't know what horrible things I've had done to me, the things that were said. It would take a literal miracle for me to be able to get past that. The good news is we serve a God who's in the business of making miracles. And for you today, there is hope, but we just have to reach out and accept it. And maybe that starts with you making the best decision of your life, which is to follow Jesus. But before that, I have a question for you. The end of Jonah, the book of Jonah, kind of ends with a question that God gives. And He says in Jonah 4:4, is it right for you to be angry? I want to ask you that same question today and ask all of us. It's okay for you, I want to say, to be upset. What happened was wrong. It was evil, and I'm sorry that happened. But is it okay for the anger and the hate to own your heart? Is it okay for the brokenness to define you? Are you not tired of carrying the weight of unforgiveness on your shoulders for people that you know and then just in the general sense for society? Forgiveness will free you. Forgiveness comes from righteousness, and it starts in our own heart. So today, I want you to know, hope is available. Freedom is available. You don't have to carry this any longer. And we don't have to constantly be at war and feel this pressure and have this tension in our hearts at all times. Righteousness, peace, and hope is within reach. We just have to grasp it. Follow Jesus, and the freedom you've been looking for will be within grasp. Let's stand if you can this morning. I'd love to pray for you. So Jesus, thank you for every person here. Thank you that everyone here is just chose to come, and thank you that we have this church and the hope that comes from community. God, I pray that as we kind of navigate the interpersonal relationships, the societal issues in our world and cultural problems, that we would actually look to you before we look to ourselves, that we would see your righteousness, not our own perceptions of justice. And Jesus, I just pray that for every person here, that we would seek you above all else. So give us peace in our hearts. For those that are coming forward with unforgiveness and pain, I pray that every person, from the people in this room to online to our campuses, that they would all be feeling your Holy Spirit right now and the freedom that comes from that. We pray these things over everyone. In Jesus' name, amen. You can take a seat. I'll let you know that if you made a decision today to follow Jesus, or you want to make a decision to follow Jesus, we have a QR code up on the screen. Even if you just want some more information about what it would look like to follow Jesus, we'd love to talk to you. You can go to our info table at the back, and we would be so excited to have that chat. Also, we just want to let you know that you're prayed for. We love you. And if you need prayer, that we have prayer available for any reason whatsoever. A group of pastors is going to be available on your left, my right, up here. And if you need prayer, please don't let that moment pass you by. We'd love to pray for you this morning. Like I said, we love you, you're prayed for, and we can't wait to see you next week. Have a great morning.
If you made the decision to follow Jesus, or you'd like to explore what it means to follow him, we want to help. Go to hopecity.ca/life, and there you're going to find resources to help you get started. And you can reach out to one of the pastors if you want to connect. Following Jesus is not something we're meant to do alone, so let's help you connect with Jesus and with others on a similar pursuit. We're so thankful that you took time out of your weekend to be with us, and we believe and want you to know that God has a next for you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday.